All right. If we can settle down, we can get the program started. Welcome everyone today. It's great to see almost full house here in place, and also a lot of people online. We've had a record turnout for the event. I guess the topic is very, very interesting to many of you here. My name is Jussi Luhtasela. Still a month ago, I used to be the CEO for a company called RecRite, a video recruitment SaaS company. I was in that role for 5 years. Now I'm between gigs and starting something new in May. But today I'm here in the role of moderator and the board member of the Boardman Grow network. Big thanks to our partners, PwC, Springvest, Business Finland, and Technology Industries of Finland, Teknologia ja Teollisuus. This event continues the Growth Multipliers series of events that we've been having over the past few years and will continue in the fall as well. Today the topic is funding and growth funding, and Taina asked our members in the WhatsApp group on Monday whether Finnish growth entrepreneurs feel that the lack of funding is one of the things that is holding them back and holding their growth and internationalization back. And 76% of those who answered the survey either agreed or fully agreed with the statement. So I think we're talking about the right things here today. For the agenda today, we will start off with the keynote from Juhana Brotherus. Then we'll go into a panel discussion with Eeva Grannenfelt, Aki Soudunsaari, and Eric Dayton. After which we will have Tero Lehtinen from Duunitori talk about their funding situation and history. Then a few words about the Boardman Grow sparring groups. We're kicking off 2 more groups still this spring before summertime. After that, we'll conclude the online part of the event, and we will move into facilitated roundtables. We have a great set of roundtables, facilitators from our partners, and we'll have a great discussion at the end. Then we'll get back here together, get quick key points, summaries from the facilitators of the outputs of their roundtables. After that, roughly at 4:30, we'll conclude the formal part of the event, start networking, and Taina has also promised some bubbly for us, as usual. But then, to the agenda. First on the stage, we will have Juhana Brotherus. He's the Chief Economist of Federation of Finnish Entrepreneurs, Suomen Yrittäjät. Juhana is a former banker and investment professional. He's worked as a board member for listed companies, SMEs, foundations, and NGOs. Today, his topic will be big picture, what is happening in the funding market. And you can imagine that given the ongoing situation, he might have had to redo his slides a few times this week. So we'll see what's coming up next. And one note, for the people online, use the tool. If you have questions, you can type your questions into the chat box. We'll pull it off from there. And after each keynote, we'll have a time for Q&A here in the room, so you'll get a mic. So you'll get the opportunity to ask questions from the presenter. But Juhana, stage is yours.
Thank you, Jussi, and very nice afternoon to everybody here and online also. My name is Juhana Brotherus, and my job is to give you the big picture now, but as Jussi mentioned, it has been a difficult job as the picture has been changing on a daily basis for now almost a week. I was giving a task of preparing the slides on Friday, so I'll be splitting my presentation in 2 parts. Part 1 is without slides and talking about the current development on the funding market. And then part 2 is my slides, which is what is happening if this whole turmoil suddenly is pushed aside with one press briefing of putting the tariffs and the trade war to backside, and nobody. It's really hard to explain and forecast, and impossible to reason what we are witnessing at the moment. So last Friday, last Wednesday and Thursday night, Mr. Trump held a White House briefing, if some of you saw that, where he had these famous tariffs on many countries and penguins aside of let's say, additional tariffs which Trump was not happy about due to bilateral deficits, which is really an odd thing to do. I have a deficit with my grocery store and I don't want to change that. I don't want to go there to work. So my labor, I don't have to change them. And my employer has a deficit with me. I don't buy from my employer as much as they buy from my labor. So that's something which is really hard to square with. So what has happened after the trade war was instigated? Stock markets are down significantly, more than 10% in US and here in Finland also. The daily volatility has been enormous. The week's volatility index is the highest it has been in 32 years, aside from the beginning of COVID pandemic and the beginning of the financial crisis. To give you some overlook where we are at the moment. And the funding market has frozen completely. In US, there were no bond issuances by the corporate sector on Thursday, no on Friday, and none in Monday. I haven't checked today, I have been too busy, but my guess is that yesterday was also a day without any bond issuances, which is really, really strange and peculiar. There were IPOs that were halted in the States, no M&A deals were announced, and the normal business activity completely frozen, because we are in unprecedented and really hard to forecast territory, and when there is unprecedented situation where it's really hard to forecast for the businesses to forecast where to go, then the easiest solution is to put your brakes on and just let's see where things are heading. It would be a lot easier for companies if everybody knew that, okay, now there would be 10% tariffs to the States, then companies would adjust, their supply chains would adjust to that. That would be a negative thing, but at least that would be something companies could deal with. But now the current situation is that nobody knows what the tariffs are going to be in 2 years, which is something you need to know if you want to do any investments, and it's impossible to know what there will be in 2 months. This morning I checked the prediction markets, and for the EU, the prediction market is that they will be lowered before June. It was 68% odds on that. So not certain, but probable. So this is where we are. Strange, worrisome situation, and the funding market will be impacted. Of course, the funding market, the companies, and the wider economy can hold on if the market is frozen for a few days, even a week or maybe 2. But if it continues, then problems will spread quickly to the real economy. Then banks and financial institutions are unable to lend money to individuals and companies alike for even for a profitable ventures, and that will hit fast the economy and the companies alike. And if there are questions on how to forecast this, as I mentioned, it's really hard to reason with this kind of situation when there is basically no logic behind these moves and these tariffs that are given, and there are justifications that are mutually exclusive for these tariffs. So on the one hand, they are saying that they want to close the trade deficit. On the other, they want to force other countries to lower their tariffs to the States so that they can lower their own. And thirdly, they claim that they can gather huge amounts of income for US with these tariffs. And if the end game is that tariffs will be lower for everybody, then where is the income? If the end game is that there's a lot of income, but companies will adjust their supply chains to the US, where is the income again? So it's hard to square with. Okay, that was the part one of my presentation. Now to the slides, and this is basically if the tariffs are pushed aside, this is what I think about the funding market going forward. To start with, you of course have to first look at the economy, and as everybody knows in the room, it has been a really difficult decade for the Finnish economy. Our GDP has been flatlined for quite a while, and we have been lagging our neighbors or peers for quite a while. And when the economy is poor, of course there are less of profitable and successful companies, and then there are less funding because it's a local game often, especially in the early stages. Business angels and VC funds are really local usually, and if there are not a lot of growth, not a lot of profits, and not many capital investors then going around in those places, so that has been on the background pushing us down. If there is one positive thing for the funding market for this trade war, it's of course that rates are low and getting lower due to these events. So there has been for quite a while a forecast in the market that rates will hover around 2%, which is the new normal, so to speak. But now, given these tariffs, the rate forecast have gotten down for maybe 25 basis points. So that is getting lower, and of course for every company and individual that has a mortgage or loans, that will be beneficial for them. But of course if your income for the company or the employees is dried up, then that's not a big plus, but something to keep an eye out. As I'm the, let's say, spokesperson for the SMEs, I want to share some figures of the business formation. And there is a lot of, let's say, misconceptions in the media when these bankruptcy figures are given and portrayed in the media. Yes, there are considerable amount of bankruptcies at the moment. It's nothing comparable to the 90s, but highest they have been in the 2000s. But actually, enterprise closures are mostly about, let's say, orderly closures, not bankruptcies. So bankruptcies are slightly over 10% of all or enterprise closings. And if you would only see this blue graph then or line, you would be right to be worried. Companies are getting wiped out. But of course you have to look at the red line at the same time. There are record high amounts of new enterprises entering the market. So enterprise openings is also highest it has been, and still higher than the closings. So a positive thing to frame this would be that we are in the midst of a creative destruction. So companies, of course, SMEs are struggling. If you had an SME that made trade with Russia or now maybe with US, of course your income and outlook is severely hampered, and there are closures happening. But at the same time, there are new opportunities arising, and there is, let's say, enterprise spirit in the Finnish economy, which is surprisingly strong, and that's something to keep an eye out as well. So I'm not as worried of those bankruptcy figures as some people for the Finnish economy than some people portray. Then I will show you few slides on how SMEs view the funding market. Jussi said that you had a WhatsApp poll, but very scientific. So I try to up the ante here. So we asked in an SME survey for 4,500 SME entrepreneurs, and that's done not by us, not of our members, but to the whole Finnish enterprises with Taloustutkimus, and that's quite reliable. And what they are saying about the financing conditions is similar to what we heard before. So maybe this will be validating, or Jussi was validating our surveys. So what are the entrepreneurs saying? That, and they are saying that financing conditions are getting tighter. Significantly or somewhat. And of course there might be a bias here that entrepreneurs, and I expect there is a bias that entrepreneurs more often say that things are getting tighter than they are getting looser, even if the true development would be different. But maybe a better way to look at it would be a time series, and this is something maybe more visible, is that the amount of entrepreneurs, so those are percentage amounts. On the green, you have those who are saying that financing conditions are getting tighter a lot, and red is a little. And you can see that the development is worrisome. Let's say that. So the access to finance is getting tighter, even if you can debate on the levels that the entrepreneurs are stating. So that's something to keep an eye at, and slightly worrisome in my opinion. So how have they getting tightened according to entrepreneurs? And the most often given answer is that capital requirements are getting tighter. The second one, or on same level, slightly over half of the people answered that the margins are increasing. So banks and financial institutions are getting higher margins, and that's also maybe not surprising if there is low growth, bankruptcies, the economic situation is worrisome. Maybe the risk reward for the financiers is getting worse, and then they will require higher margins to keep the lending activity stable. And if you look at another time series, something happened after the COVID crisis. So how many percentages or the share of companies that have not received or tried to access financing, even if they had needs? So not all the companies need external financing. Let's get them out of the picture. And it used to be quite stable at around 30% of those companies didn't get loans or financing or didn't even try to apply. But now there is something happening, and the trend is worrisome in my opinion. So it's getting tighter as we speak. If that's on the let's say, debt financing, what about equity financing? The most common way of equity financing is actually capital loans. Share issues are quite rare actually for SMEs, which is not surprising. Then I'll jump over that one, but one thing I want to show you is that SMEs that have actually payment difficulties have hovered around 20%. So 20% of SMEs have payment difficulties by themselves. And those ceasing operations, it's quite understandable. So maybe the business is not doing well, you don't have opportunities to pay your bills on time. But maybe the more worrisome figure is that the second ones, when you're grouping on growth ambition, is the most strongly growth-oriented companies. They have the second highest payment difficulties. And this is something extremely worrisome, because those are the companies we need. Hopefully here, and hopefully you guys are helping them. Those are what we need to Finland. for our economy. And of course, that's the so-called growth trap, that if your payments are coming in, let's say 12 months, 18 months time, but you have to pay in 3 months. The faster you grow, the bigger the bridge you need. And of course, financing should be the one building the bridge for those growth companies. But that's something to keep an eye at as well. So, and that's something we should be a bit worried. Then, for a few seconds, I want to raise worries on the funding market and speak of the role of the Finnish government's decision on changing TESI, so the industrial fund we have in Finland, which has been quite well run and has had quite well results. And the way it has worked before is that it has invested in Finnish private equity and VC funds. But now they're changing their logic for the fund to invest straight into companies. So it's moving into, let's say, in territories of more industrial policy and picking winners. And it's totally different game when you're making a due diligence of the manager and the skills you need there compared to picking the exact SMEs, companies which you're funding. And this is something I'm really worried about. It might ruin the old good TESI and actually have ripple effects to the Finnish private equity fund landscape. And that I hope this trend will not get stronger with the next government. I'll jump over that. I see that Trump took my time. So in the end, this is my outlook. Is the sky getting clearer, or are the clouds coming in? Maybe now I would say I'm slightly more pessimistic than, or quite a lot of more pessimistic than I was a week ago. I told Jussi that I will surprise you with my optimism. I lied. But there are strong grounds in the background. So growth has actually been picking up. The preliminary data we have for the Finnish GDP in early 2025 has been quite strong. So GDP up slightly over 1%, nothing humongous, but growth. First time since 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. Interest rates are down. Now they're getting lower, but for a bad reason. And a new wave of entrepreneurship. So the building blocks are looking quite well. But now the downsides are maybe too big to handle for this year. So if these tariffs are in place for this year, US will be in a recession, Europe will be in a recession, and also Finland will be in a downturn as well. So risk-off sentiment is something really strong we are seeing at the moment. Financing conditions are getting tighter even before these events, and this will get only worse. And maybe the risk aversion will be more true than false after these events. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Juhana. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. So let's start with there, back at the audience.
Hey there. Thank you very much. I want to disagree with 2 points.
You can disagree with more.
I think we got limited time, so I'll just start at 2. So look, on Trump, there is a great deal of logic to what he's doing.
Tell me.
No, it's fine. Look, I worked for Boris Johnson for 3 years.
Oh, then you know.
So I know what it's like to work for an egomaniac who says a lot of bluster. Trump is trying to, don't worry, Trump's got a skeleton closet full of problems. But what he's trying to do with his tariffs, A, is distract everybody, and he's achieving it, right? B, he's trying to force the US to reinforce its manufacturing base, right? Now, he can afford to do that, because in 2008, the US and the European economies were the same size. But today, the US economy is twice our size. So it's pain, but it's pain that he's inflicting more on everybody else than himself. So the logic is about US manufacturing growth and control, and automating in the way that China has. So that's point one. Quickly, point two. On Tessie, I hear you. I've spent quite a bit of time with Tessie recently, and their argument at the moment is VCs aren't bringing the match funding for us to do fund-on-fund investments. Yeah? So we're having to do direct investments because the VCs aren't going further than Stockholm or London to raise the cash. Right? And I think that's a fair challenge on that side. And we can talk the Trump stuff later. And I can share all the Boris secrets as well.
Can I, thanks for the good comments and disagreements. If I can disagree with your second disagreement of the goal of bringing in manufacturing, which is, I think, something that Trump actually wants, at least that what he has spoken quite systematically for years, so that's probably true. But if you want to bring in manufacturing, you will put on tariffs, yes, but those should be something that businesses should be able to rely on. So what happened in Thursday in the markets when these tariffs were instigated, actually US markets and US manufacturers came down more than European and Asian manufacturers. And that's because nobody can rely on Trump on holding those tariffs. So if you're a business leader making an investment decision, you should know what the tariffs are, not now. That you're not interested on that. You need to know what they are in 2 years or maybe 5 when something comes out of your new shining great factory. But nobody knows what the tariffs will be in 2 months. So if he would be proficient in his goal, that's something he should be doing, and we actually should be seeing US manufacturing stocks getting priced higher, but that's not something we're seeing at the moment. So maybe that's his goal, but that's not where the road is leading us at the moment, if you trust markets, and that's where I start my journey usually. Thanks.
All right. Here I have a question from Eeva.
Eeva Grannenfelt, hey. 2 tiny questions. The first one is currency, obviously. I used to be a currency trader, so long time ago. That's my first question. The second is unemployment in US is roughly 4%. How it's possible that with that unemployment you are able to have a lot of industrial investments in US?
Exactly. I will start with the second and give a short answer to the first one. If Trump is successful in bringing in industrial production, that means that something else has to give. So basically service sector jobs has to cut down. And because there are no employment reserves in US, and especially with his immigration policies, those reserves are getting depleted at the moment. So and for the economy, it's a bad trade. So the service sector jobs are giving him more value add for the US economy compared to the industrial side. And the starting wages for these auto industries are something like $25 an hour, and that's nothing spectacular. So in Costco you can get a similar job wage or even higher, and that's not the best service sector jobs that might be pushed aside. So that's especially true. On the currency side, I used to work in Danske Bank when Mr. Brotherus was there also, or Sampo Pankki at that time before the name change, and I was giving a presentation. I was an economist there and giving a presentation after him, and he started with his presentation in usual blockbuster style, saying that everybody who forecasts currencies is an idiot. So since then, my line has always been, I'm not forecasting currencies. Sorry, Eeva.
Perfect. And with that, we thank Juhana for really interesting insight.
Thank you.
Time to move on to our panel. So would Aki, Erik, and Eeva join me here on stage? And a reminder to people online to post your questions. I'll pick them up here, and we'll move into questions here in the room as well. But first, let's start with a short round of introductions. So if you can just quickly tell who you are, what do you work with, and what's your relationship with the funding, so we can get started. Aki, you want to start from that side?
Sure, thanks Jussi. Lovely to be here. My name is Aki Soudunsaari, serial entrepreneur background. I'm not an economist. I only know building companies and perhaps some funding of those. I'm a CEO at Springvest, which is a organization that helps Finnish tech companies to raise funding from Finland, from entrepreneurs and private investors and family offices. So helping this ecosystem of Finnish growth companies to grow and go abroad.
Thank you, Aki. Eeva.
Okay, yes, my name is Eeva Grannenfelt, and I come from a company called Grannenfelt Finance. We organize also funding, but both equity and debt funding, and also grants to the company. When we started the company 9 years ago, we decided that we try to combine public and private market. We never understood that the market actually is growing, the public side. Okay. At the moment, if Aki is organizing equity funding from Finland, I would say we organize equity funding abroad. We have roughly 500 to 800 investors when we get the funding. So it's a huge amount of investors we contact. And what is the market situation at the moment? I think the strategic investors, so investors which have some kind of strategic idea before the investment, that market has not closed, at least yet. VCs, yes, certainly in some cases from US, they have told they don't want to invest to Europe at the moment. Debt market, banks, I have never seen, I have been in business more than 45 years, never seen banks as aside as to the moment. So that's... but then we have European Investment Bank, so that's the only good thing, to be honest. Then what else? I'm also an entrepreneur because I was born 1958, and our family business was started 63. We sold that at 21. It was an industrial company, and then this company we started with my son 9 years ago. That's about it.
Thank you, Eeva. And Eric.
Yeah, hi, I'm CFO at Vapaus, Eric Dayton. I've been living in Finland for about 25 years, or living in Europe for 25 years, 5 years stint in Ireland. Came here actually to open a business at first, and then went back to school at Helsinki Kauppakorkeakoulu at the time, studied rahoitus, and then went to Nokia for quite a while and Microsoft, and came back about 5 years ago. The reason I'm here talking about funding is I've spent the last 36 months chasing cash hard at Vapaus, so a bit of hands-on knowledge in the last 3 years.
Which is actually quite a good segue, because I thought we could start with the Vapaus case first. So could you talk a bit about that growth journey? You've been with the company now for 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. Met, I guess Tatu is one of your frequent members. Yes. But yeah, met Tatu and Mikko or a bit more than 3 years ago, and then we agreed, it'd be interesting. My own background is, I like finance and money, and I'm also big into cycling. My family's done about 2 laps of the planet on e-bikes in the past decade with kids, so it kind of was a nice fit on the personal side, and then also the interest of trying to build a business like this sounded interesting. I think one of the really important things to realize about Vapaus is it's basically a type of obligation generator in a way. So while many people will be thinking about debt funding as a means of funding capex and stuff, we're kind of looking to make the business something that puts other people's money to work and deploys it in bicycle services through a certain scheme or tax schemes. So that's kind of, I think, a big differentiator in what's being sold as the underlying asset in what the business is. And one of the interesting parts of Mikko, the founders, Mikko and Tatu, they're very focused on doing the right thing for the planet. customer experience is super important to them, but then that can bring you into conflicts with what like a lender might appreciate. So, and Vapaus has been very much biased to trying to create the best possible employer and employee experience and do the right thing for the planet. I've had the challenge of trying to bridge some of those gaps between what the funders would ideally look for, which has made it a little tougher, but it's also made it more of an accomplishment, I think. So that's been good.
So your investor deck looks different than your B2B sales deck.
Well, we try to keep them highly aligned, just different information. So.
Aki, you talk a lot about financing, different financing methods and putting them together into a holistic package for a growth company. Could you elaborate a bit more about this?
Sure, yeah. So what Eeva said is super important, that you think about your funding strategy, not just like, I need to get some money, but the years ahead, especially if you're an ambitious growth company. And I think the discussion around media is about equity funding, raising funding rounds. But what is super important, both from the ownership's kind of value point of view, people's nerves point of view, and many other, is that you try to come up with the funding package like for the next 2 years, 3 years. There might be 7 or 11 different instruments during that time, not just like one equity round and that's it. There are cases, of course, where does that work. But at least in my kind of case, where we are working with health and environmental tech and dual use and industrial tech, you need to really thought out those in the future. So kind of plan out different grants and loans, special loans, for example, from Business Finland, EIC, European Union, ELY-keskus, and so on. And then usually the gold, which is required, which unlocks these other instruments, are the equity investors. But in the current situation, I would boldly say that venture capitalists are not so venture anymore. So there's a lot of cases where they come in last. I know 5 cases, I could mention the names right now, where the people, for example, who are doing green transition companies, they need to build factories or they need to invest in some kind of manufacturing things. Half of the funding comes from public sector. 20%, 30%, 25%, 7% comes from different loan instruments, which are backed with Finnvera, and there are Nordea and other different players in there. And then when you have the funding equation, 70% of that ready, then venture capital comes in. 10 years ago, it was the opposite. You would have venture capitalists joining in as the first kind of comer, and then you would build the package from that point of view. So it requires some navigation skills as of right now, being an entrepreneur, and especially building international high ambition companies.
Eeva, you want to elaborate and comment on that?
I think a very good point. It depends very much about the company. If it's a green transformation company where you invest a heavy amounts, obviously, that's very, very grant dependent. And everyone knows that our government do not have so much money at the moment. So you have to take a look of the Europe. We have solved this. We know, and actually we are organizing at the end of, in May, a seminar, how to combine the public money and private money, where we go through all the grants which are possible to the green transformation, but also to other type of companies, because there are different kind of instruments. And I would say one of the most important instrument, obviously, is at the moment the EIC programs. EIC grant, very old, 2.5 million euro, but now they have 2 other types. It's EIC plus equity, up to 10 million in this market situation, up to 10 million. And then you have even another one, which is then scale up, which is then from 30 million upwards. But obviously, you have to understand the rules. And I was shocked when I had a green, someone wanted to build a factory, 150 million euros. And they called me and said that we want to start on this autumn. And I said, wait a minute now. We don't have any grants at the moment available, no in Finland, nor in European Union, because the grant application time scheduled are year after year the same. So they start and then they close. And now it's closing in April. So I have to say, because the innovation fund can be from an industrial grant, it can be up to 60% out of the investment. So it's a huge amount of money. If you have that kind of money, it's easy to raise the equity. So I would say that you have to plan much more carefully, especially in this market situation.
Eric, what's your practical experience from Vapaus on different kind of instruments? What have you guys?
Well, maybe I'd like to circle back to echoing that. Like, I agree with them completely in terms of having a... Yeah, I was sitting down for a minute working. We run on basically 4+ year plan. So kind of thinking about, and that models, you've got to model the balance sheet, like 3-statement financial model, so that if you're thinking about having debt, lenders are going to want to see that you look forward, that you have a plan, kind of if you're looking to raise in that regard. I do think it's like it is very difficult to find the capital in Finland. Most of the capital outside of Tessis has come from French VC, Stockholm or Norion, which is a Swedish-based bank. So yeah, the kind of what we've been able to do, but that's been our ability to also reach out beyond Finland and find those markets. And then you actually had a question. Maybe I could touch on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, your question was...
I was just asking about the kind of practical experiences, but you kind of covered that.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, just would really echo those points and make sure that the business is planned out to detail. You have alternatives, and yeah, our experience too is public money comes by, but the runway is really long, so you have to make sure you're ready for that.
So you got to model the balance sheet multiple years ahead.
Yeah.
Eva, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to add, please note, in quite many cases, we have investors from Japan, from US, from Austria, from Germany, because in Finland, we do not have capital in Finland. You have to prepare your team and business idea to be able to sell it outside Finland immediately. I think that's the most important. And that's why our equity rounds, our debt rounds, more and less outside Finland. Obviously, we help companies with Finvera. They have a couple of interesting loan systems at the moment. You can forget the banks if you are a growth company. So that's my point. To be honest, I was in 18 years in the banking. So, and that has changed so much. So I would say that plan carefully and try to achieve outside Finland. And what we mean with the strategy investors, when we go into the company, we always say, okay, who would like to invest to your company outside Finland? And then we start to go through those. And that's how we get the list, part of the list, from 500 to 800. So it means a lot of other investors also.
Aki, you wanted to continue on that.
Really short comment, unpopular opinion here. There's always funding for great cases. Great companies are always funding available for those. Of course, the competition is tighter all the time. And you need to be able to navigate through different instruments, build the story, and be able to explain yourself from different angles to EIC, to Business Finland, to ELY, than venture capital investors or family, friends, and fools. You'll be able to kind of have the core of the story the same, but then be able to explain from different point of view. Like you said that you need to understand for example, the restrictions or the basic, why are they able to give you grant funding? If you know, though, tick the box type of thing. It's like public procurement. You need to fill in these type of information, fill in these boxes. So you'll be able to navigate those, and it might be difficult for an early, kind of a first-time founder or second-time founder and so on.
That's a good segue to my kind of final question, then I'll open up to the floor. Who do you recommend that the growth entrepreneur who perhaps doesn't have this know-how in their board, for example, or doesn't themselves have a finance background, who should they talk to, apart from Springvest and Grannenfelt Finance, of course? What do you guys say?
Well, I have to say I'm very happy with Business Finland and Finvera. They are very well organized institutions, and I always keep on saying to my clients, "Hey, you come on, guys! First, you take Business Finland money. That's only a bit over 1% interest rate. If that's not going to success story, you can always ask them to give to forget the loan." So that's the easiest thing. Then the second point is Finvera, but then you need already turnover, you need clients. you need perhaps some equity. We have done several cases now with the Finnvera loan where we need some equity. But and at the moment, especially, obviously, it's easiest to raise equity from outstanding equity holders. They have to be backing up company when the time is as it is at the moment.
I fully agree on that these governmental players, so there's three musketeers as of right now. There's Tesi, Business Finland, and then Finnvera, and they are going to the right direction, no matter what Juhana said here. They're going to the right direction from growth companies' point of view. There are 3,000 high ambition growth companies in Finland. There are 550,000, 560,000 companies in Finland. So we are talking about sports, and then we are talking about pesäpallo, like a really niche sport in a way. So I'm only talking about these companies because that's what I know. So in that kind of cases, the problem is that there are 34 different public instruments in Finland. 34 different public grants and loans type of instruments. So of course, maybe someone could kind of fix those and be more aligned. Business Finland has been doing a great job on building those. But then the problem for the entrepreneur's point of view is every entrepreneur, growth entrepreneur knows 2 or 3 or 4 instruments. But then if you are in Kotka, you're eligible for, I don't know, Pharmacide. 35% of your next investment might come from that instrument, but you're not familiar with it. So maybe there's some marketing about to be done on different instruments and so on. I don't know if there should be a helpline organized by the government where someone navigates you. But as a last thing, the customer orientation in these companies has been super good to the right direction. 50 years ago, when in my second company, we talked with Ely or Business Finland, they were holding their cards like this or even like under the table. Right now, they're really trying to help you. They're not hiding their instruments. They are saying that you should first get this. When you get these results, you should get this and that and that. So ask them. Maybe one answer is... Okay.
Eric, who's your go-to person on financing architecture?
We've had some really great advice from access partners, I think, kind of externally. But it was probably a wise move for Mikko and Tatu to hire someone that understands planning and numbers.
That's you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to brag, but try to find someone that's decent at that so that you can bring it in-house. And it's required to make your story compelling, especially if you're looking for debt capital and material quantums.
Excellent. We have roughly 10 minutes left of the panel, so questions from the audience, at least there.
Okay, sorry, me again. So one of Finland's strengths is its small social graph. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
It's one of its strengths.
Absolutely.
Now, I've been here 3 years. I've only met 3 entrepreneurs who want to generate billions in revenue. What am I doing wrong? Billions, not millions, billions. The B word.
Who wants to start?
I have no idea. Maybe you're moving kind of circling in different kind of environment. Where the Finnish modesty may be the one reason, and you need a couple of beers or different drinks to get those people out from the millions to billions. But, yeah, I know. Yes. Yeah. I think one of the problems in Finland is that the home market is so small. You have to somehow. There are exceptions. You have to somehow win the home market, but it's so small that you cannot live with it. So it's a great kind of R&D environment, test bed for building a business. But the problem for building a business and starting a business in Finland is that the person next to you buys when the other person buys next to you, and so on. So people are not early adopters in Finland. You are the exception here, I would say. But people who buy things are not the early adopters. So the chain of evidence is a little bit more difficult there. The problem with the next step, where you could see that, okay, maybe I'm able to build a business worth billions, is that when you go to European market, for example, in this time and day of Trump's actions. It's not one market. It's 27 markets with different regulations, restrictions, and so on. Ursula von Leyen, who is the European Commission, last week said, she's a politician, so maybe with a grain of salt, but she said that they want to create one market for growth companies in Europe and get all of those like barriers and so on aside, because we're not able to compete if we have 27 different markets in Europe. If we want to make Europe great again, don't quote me on this, it has to happen somehow. And regarding the small market in Finland, Finland has a public procurement market of 48 billion euros. 48 billion euros, out of which maybe a few million goes to growth companies. Few million out of 48 billion yearly market. That's regulations, restrictions, and so on. People are not able to, young companies are not able to offer their solutions for governments or different corporates and whatnot. That's another barrier we need to be thinking about. If we could grow 1 million more in revenue in Finland, that's a lot more evidence to international investors or Finnish investors to chip in. Long answer, sorry for. But, yeah.
Eeva, you want to continue?
Yes, if I add to this, those very good points, is that unfortunately it's so that the funding situation in Finland, I think I have met absolutely, I only work with the companies, and I think these companies here in Finland, growth companies, they are great. They are extremely good as in US. Not worse. But the problem is the market structure. You don't have enough funding. That's absolutely one restriction which I consider is it's a very high. English language, not the restrictions, because young people speak excellent English. So I think it's more or less the biggest problem is funding. So what could we do? I used to be a chief investment officer in a pension company, so you know already. Put some of the money, like in UK, to the pension companies, to growth companies. Because look, the Helsinki exchange. I have been looking that of more than 40 years in my business. So what are the companies? 200 years old? 100 years old? How much they grow? Next to nothing. So, I mean, invest to the growth. That's the main point. So what has to do? I know all these CEOs, CFOs of these companies, so you have to change the regulations and politicians. So that's the best way to go forward. Don't quote this, but I'm not so anymore in a pension business, but they are clients to us, obviously.
Okay. Eric, how do you find wannabe billionaires in Finland?
Yeah, I think it's probably a really ambitious target from the Finnish environment. So, and I wouldn't, in my experience, I wouldn't say Finns, even if they have greater ambitions, they're careful to publicly disclose them as a general bias. So yeah, I have a few outliers from Kaupis Finance that break that rule. But yeah, I would say as a general, that might also be a bias in the market.
Quick final question to wrap things up. Given the situation Juhana was referring to, the ongoing trade war between US and the rest of the world, and given the market turmoil caused by that, what kind of advice have you guys given to the companies you're working with? How should entrepreneurs prepare for this ongoing turmoil? And Eric, of course, in your case, what are you guys doing at Vapaus?
At the moment, yeah, we're just looking at our plans, but luckily we're not in a market that's really exposed to the situation, and we're getting positive signals from, on the funding front from our partners, so there's no real panics at the moment. So yeah, we're not doing business in the US or have material exposures in that sense. Bikes mainly come from Asia. Okay. So it's pretty...
Aki, how about the companies you work with?
Being an entrepreneur since 2007, it's a fight against all odds all the time. I think this is nothing different than Russian invading Ukraine, financial crisis, COVID kind of things and so on. So it's another bump on the ride, and you need to adapt. And that's where growth companies usually excel, is adapting to the changing environments. Hopefully there won't be so many hiccups here and so on, but there will be. in many ways.
Eeva, to conclude.
Okay, I'm very practical because I love companies. So first of all, if you don't need to raise equity, don't. That's okay. Don't raise equity. The other point is, if you have to raise equity, don't take the valuation up here. Try to have, if you raise equity, you can do it with another instrument so that you raise from existing shareholders, because they have to back up the company in this kind of situation. Then you leverage that tiny equity with a debt, and we have several possibilities there. If you have to raise equity, I'm absolutely sure that you are not able to raise it in Finland. Because obviously they do it from private people, but we do it from institutional investors or bigger investors or strategic investors. So go outside of Finland, and that's my main point. And we have at the moment, I would say, 8 cases going on, 8 to 10 cases going on at the moment.
It depends on in the phase of the growth of the companies, of course. For bigger round, tens of millions and so on, difficult to get from Finland. We specialize in 5 to 12 million euro equity rounds. We doubled our funding last year. We almost doubled our revenue last year, which was a difficult year there. So there are funding available in Finland also. I think it should be like everyone's right to participate in funding Finnish technology companies. It's like you would have your own Finnish national tracksuit on, and you are able to support those companies, join the ride and see what they are doing, understand how it's played and so on. So it's a kind of an adventure in a way. Of course, it should be a financial investment as well, but kind of supporting Finnish companies. I think we need to be, how to say this? Don't quote me again. Eeva,
we're just recording everything.
We need to be patriotic about supporting growth companies, Finnish growth companies. Patriotic in a way that, okay, let's push them forward and help them grow and so on. The problem with the financing is in the early stage. There are 42 different VC funds for 500,000 to 2 million, 3 million tickets. The problem is that there's TESI, and that's more or less it when you're talking about 10 million euro investments. There are a few exceptions. The problem is that when they are about to grow, we don't have enough finance, so they are forced to look outside Finland. So we have companies who are ripe for winning their niche, and then we are forced to give the majority of the ownership outside of Finland. It's like we are nurturing sports talents until they're 18, and then when they want to go to Championships League or whatever the sport is, then they change their nationality.
But that's very difficult to change.
And with that, I think Aki will be on stage with his blue and white tracksuit next time, and we'll need to thank our panel, Eric, Aki, and Eeva. Huge thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we will have on stage Tero Lehtinen, who works as a CFO for the Finland's biggest job search platform and work-life media, Duunitori. Duunitori has launched their Swedish site Jobland in 21 and has since grown in the Nordics through, both organically and through acquisitions. Tero has a background in private equity and kind of both sides of the funding landscape. For example, he was part of the management team that raised a 15 million Series E round at Sulapak, and while working at private equity at Vaaka Partners, he was contributing to the international expansion of Musti ja Mirri. But I'll let him talk more about these, and especially the Duunitori case.
Yep, thanks.
Go, Tero.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, seems logical. Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. I think that they actually wanted Thomas, our CEO and founder here, but he's actually out of town, not in Helsinki, so you're stuck with me. Sorry about that. And I think that very good presentations here, interesting topics, and I think that the last panel had good kind of insight on, especially in the startup scene and VC. But my kind of a topic on funding for international growth, I have a background in private equity as well, so I spent roughly 10 years at Vaaka Partners and went on that one case, but there are other kind of interesting cases on kind of growing a Finnish small and mid-sized company to abroad as well. And then after that, I've also worked at Kone, so looking at growing with your cash flow. It's a bit a different thing. And then at Sulapak, it was a VC funding, a totally different world, doing stuff fast and breaking things. And now at Duunitori, having a private equity, Intera Partners, helping us to grow. So my team says I'm going to leverage my 20 years of experience and try to have this anecdotal presentation. It's not science. So hopefully we'll get good discussions on few topics. So first, kind of looking at what I've seen in the VC and PE world. And I have kind of good experience from Business Finland. I know how Springvest works and so on. You have minority cases and so on, but I'll just try to be in this private equity VC that are the main things that you usually do the funding. Then let's take a deep dive on the Duunitori growth journey, and then to start the discussion, some takeaways. So the mood killer in first, just don't do it. I mean, it's super hard. If you look at the private equity case and you want to grow outside of your home market, go to Sweden and you will see that actually it's much more competitive. It is difficult. If you think about VC cases, first get the team together, then meet 200 to 300 investors. Hopefully you get the funding. Then you see that how does the PowerPoint actually work in real life. It's tough. But okay, we're here. Everybody's committed. We're going to do it. So we need funding. And why? Well, you really need deep pockets when you go outside. It's like an IT project that you kind of think that, this is how we're going to do it, and then you multiply by P. So it takes 3 times more time, and it will cost more. Just as an illustration, 2 years later, that the EBITDA break even is 2 years later has a massive impact on what the funding needs are. But then again, we're still committed. We just need deep pockets, and we have the good team. So I put in, like I said, I'll just look at what are these two main differences. And I think that you really need to find the good match. So what's the business case? What's the business on its own? And also what the entrepreneur, what the owner wants to do. I think that these are things that you need to really think, where do you find the matches? If it's a VC, your pre-cash flow, or you're actually generating cash flow, but your target or kind of plan needs a lot of more cash flow that you're generating, you have this massive market, so you're looking for explosive growth, and you're willing to break things because there actually isn't anything to break. And then if you think about private equity, when you have an SME generating good or excellent cash flow and you want to grow, then it's more like an incremental. It can be fast growth, but it's different because you are preserving the profitability. You don't want to destroy that. You don't want to destroy the cash flow that you're generating. But then again, it's like recruiting. It's that both sides need to agree. So of course, the entrepreneur would like the best names and low funding cost, but the investor needs to agree. And I think it's about timing as well. So you need to kind of think that when is a good time. I think that there was a good kind of call on this, that when do you want to raise the equity funding, because it will dilute you. Or if you're even selling, then how much value are you going to extract from the equity that you're going to sell in your exit? So it might be that you want to first use your cash flow to grow the business a bit, or that you have a good case in Finland, but everybody thinks that, this is something Finnish specific. So you use a bit of a cash flow to prove that it actually works somewhere else. So timing. And then, at least my learnings when talking about with the, especially I think VC investors, they say that they're going to help a lot and they're going to open doors, and they do that. They are a good sparring partner, and you need them. But at the end of the day, it's the management team that has to do all the heavy lifting. That's the persons that you need to kind of deliver the case. So team is also super important. But kind of the main thing is that you really need to think about your case and what do you want to do, what fits the bill. So these are kind of the things just kind of from the start that we're getting the funding and so on. I'm not going to jump into the exits and so on. I think it was already said that you need to be kind of few steps ahead and think about the exits and so on. What are the steps? But this is kind of the just the beginning. So let's now look at Duunitori and kind of the growth story. So Nordic job search platform and a leading recruitment marketing company. Started as Duunitori here in Finland, but now already operating with Jobland brand in Sweden, also with Keparo brand and Job Safari, and then as a Jobland and Job Safari in Norway. So a Nordic footprint. 140 people, 2 offices, 1 in Stockholm, 1 in Helsinki. We have the most visited commercial site here in Finland, so market leader and fastest growing in Sweden, as you can see. So it seems that we do social media. And instead of kind of taking our price list, like what we do, I thought that this is better. So we kind of divided in 3 M's. And the most important one is the marketplace, the job search engine. That's creating a lot of value. It's creating a lot of value for the Finnish economy. So the talent can use it freely, and actually also our customers, companies can use it freely to a certain point. But if you really want to get the value for you, you should talk to us how to leverage the marketplace to extract the value for you. On top of that, we have our own media. So that is part of driving traffic to our site. Organic traffic is important. You know, like I said, we use social media, but that's paid traffic. So it's creating more kind of creating the value, you know, for the marketplace. Then we have the marketing agency, so strategic employer branding, how you should be talking about your employer brand, how you should be fine-tuning it to catch to the right talent so that you have the best talent today and tomorrow. So on top of that, on Bits of Pieces, we do a lot of content as well. We actually do research global-wide and so on. But really the key is the marketplace. And so if we think about the growth story, I think that it's an exceptionally fascinating thing that somebody has built a platform business in Finland. So from 2009 to in a couple of years, Martti and Toma started the journey, and I think that it's a presentation on its own, and Thomas will probably give that in a later event. But let's now just focus on the latter part. So in 2022, opened organically a site to kind of see how it works in Sweden. But then again, I wasn't part of the team then, but Thomas and Martti started to figure out that, you know, how to fund the international growth. Like I said, it will take money. And they did quite an extensive search to find the right partner, like I said, and they found alignment with Intera partners with their track record on doing growth internationally. And then I came aboard at the same time that Intera came in, and since then we have been doing the organic growth, but also accelerating our path with the M&A. So first doing a small M&A buying Job Safari in Norway to kind of learn how does it work if you're kind of trying to buy a small platform. And then now last year accelerating buying Keparo, more of an kind of an agency there, and then Job Safari, a working platform, but not the biggest one. And I guess now thinking about my earlier comments, like what are then the surprises that we have seen, and how has it played with us? So first of all, the organic growth has been much tougher, so building a platform actually takes quite a lot of time. But part of the playbook was that we're going to accelerate everything with the M&A, and that's what we have been doing. And kind of finding out that the Swedish market is difficult is actually not a surprise. I remember with Musti ja Mirri, it's a very competitive market. I had some talks with Wolt guys that started that, and their first expansion was Sweden, and it was one of the, but I understood it was one of the toughest to get on black numbers. So Sweden is, even though the Finnish companies usually look there, it is a tough market. But it's a growth journey. It's still in the making. So becoming the leading recruitment marketplace, and what we want to say is a kind of a human-based recruiting marketing technology company in the Nordics. That's still in the works. We are good in the tracks, but still many things to do. So let's wrap up before the Q&A, kind of my anecdotal thoughts and to spur the discussion. You really need to commit. It's going to be a tough thing to do. And then maybe jumping first to the bullet point 3, you have to have a good numbers and story and people in place, but it kind of evolves. When you find the right partner, when you start the growth journey, I think then you can add on to the team, you can add the numbers, and the story evolves. Like I said, you will get good advice, but never forget that it's you, the management team, that really needs to do all the hard work. And then prepare to localize and kind of be kind of ready for the surprises that are coming. One thing I forgot to mention is like, what's the biggest surprise that we have had now that we started our growth journey is that for years, probably even decades, the global job ad market has been always growing. Now suddenly in 2023, there was a big downturn. So there was actually this big global recruiting technology companies that started layoffs and so on. So, and we didn't know, it was not in my plans or Excel's, this tariff thing. So let's see what happens. And kind of my ending comment is that, you know, when you're growing in the Nordics, you probably need the right people. And I think Duunitori Group is the one that can help you with that. So I'll leave and now open for questions.
Thanks, Tero. Questions from the audience? Whilst you guys are thinking, I have one. So going back to the earlier discussions we had with the panel, how does your kind of financing architecture look like in total? So you mentioned that you have Inter as your PE partner, but what other instruments are you using?
Well, it's like a usual LBO. So then you have the equity coming from one private equity fund and then a bank. So Danske Bank is our banking partner. And I have very good experiences with Business Finland. I totally agree. When you are in the VC world, it is very important to get the things going. But I don't think that there's much to offer due to different reasons to these kind of more stable PE cases. And I don't know even if it's that's a problem. I think it kind of makes sense that, you know, it's a private funded thing and it should run on its own. So, but there are some other kind of exceptions and things. Like I said, this is kind of a generic way of looking at it.
Here we have a question.
Yep.
Just a sec.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you acquired the companies, so how did you integrate them to one common piece? That's one question that I have. And then another one is also, what is your opinion about the collaboration between the VC world and then the PE world? How does it work? How should it work according to you?
So if we take the last first, so was it more like the VC world with the management team, that interaction, or supporting the growth? I think that I have like anecdotal evidence. They are supporting it differently because the cases are so different. So and there are kind of a lot of different VCs out there as there are PEs. So I think there's a huge variety, and that's why you need to find the right match that they offer the right support. So it's a bit difficult to kind of generalize any good answer. But I think the private equity, if it's an LBO, if it's a buy and build, there's like a natural way that because private equity, it's they're buying everything. So hammer and you only see nails. So if there's a problem, you buy something, like roughly, right? So there they have a lot of knowledge and they can help and they can even kind of support part of the process. So that's kind of natural. And then in the VC world, I guess they can help in kind of finding new funding rounds, but it's not so clear, and it kind of depends on the company. Then on the integration, like I said, it's last year bought these companies. The interesting part, I guess, is the Job Safari one, where we made it's more like an IPR acquisition, but then again, you need to set up everything, and it took X months to do. But now, when we bought the Job Safari in Sweden, we were much faster. So a lot of learning is happening, and there the integration is pretty fast because there's basically no people coming in. And now then with Keparo, it takes much more time. We have an aligned goal and kind of building the marketplace and so on. So it's still in the works, but I think that kind of with the DD process, we knew what we were buying and we knew that our values match, so that we're not kind of conflicting in that matter. So it has helped a lot, but of course still in the making.
We had another question over there.
Yeah, here by the behind the pillars. I was looking at the numbers that you've publicly outed so far. There's no numbers for 2024 yet. Now with the M&A or the IPRs in Sweden and Norway, where do you go? Where's the financial indicators going and in terms of revenue and both profit?
We're forecasting growth this year, but if you look at the market, the Finnish market is pretty horrible. So I think that it's public. You can go to our website, Duunitori, and see how many jobs there are at the platform. And it's basically all the jobs that there are in Finland. And it's still, was it like 20% down from last year? I mean, still going down. So not helping us at all. But then again, in Sweden, it has bottomed out, not growing, but more stable. So hopefully the kind of Finnish job market finds the bottom soon. But we think that there are still things that we can do and grow. But of course, if the market is going down and we are the market leader here in Finland, it is a tough job. But then again, the marketplace, the platform is creating a lot of value for the Finnish economy, and there's part of that is of course for the company to monetize as well.
Having run another recruitment tech company for the past 5 years, I can second what Tero is saying. 30% of the market was wiped out 2 years ago, and another 30 last one. We have a question from Eeva here.
Okay, very, very fast. What about how you found the debt market? Because when we look from the growth company's point of view, the banks are extremely tough at the moment. And we don't have actually in Europe a private debt investors. When UK we have, but Europe is much less than compared to the US. Are you using or planning to use these debt providers outside banking?
Well, generically, I said that in a private equity deal, it's pretty kind of tied in, and that's the package that you find one bank and you go along. Then, of course, if and sometimes you run into problems, then that happens. Really, not in our plans. I think that we have a solid funding kind of a journey ahead of us, and like usually private equity at some point needs to bring back the money for the investors, so there's going to be an exit. Really difficult to kind of say anything generic on it. What I've understood is that even in these LBO cases, a lot of it is kind of sold off balance sheet. So the banks are not that eager to finance even the private equity. But we have actually, with the acquisitions, been using also Danske to finance them, and they have been a good partner in the sense that they're eager to finance our growth.
Excellent. Thank you a lot, Tero. Really interesting stuff.
Okay, good. Thanks.
And with that, we are heading towards our next stage. But before that, a short ad break. We've been running these sparring groups in Boardman Grow now for a little over 2 years, 2-3 years. Over 10 sparring groups on different kind of topics. The idea is that you have a group of entrepreneurs or other key operators in the company getting together around a certain topic and helping each other on the way, having perhaps 1 or 2 experts joining the sessions. Usually these are from 6 to 12 months. My opinion, in my experience, 5 to 7, 5 to 8 meetings. Fair amount of time allocated for each meeting. I personally participated in 2 over the years and been super helpful and really interesting to get to know the other businesses, how people are doing different things. So we're launching 2 new groups now still this spring. So there's going to be one with the topic of leading sales run by Anna Porve, who is a CEO from Kubi. We'll be really focusing on the customer sales. How do you set achievable sales goals? How do you set clear goals? How do you track them? How do you work with underperforming sales teams and so forth? Of course, the teams themselves always actually in the first session set their own agenda and the topics that are relevant for them. And the second one, internationalization of a growth company. That's going to be moderated by me. We're going to be looking at the many topics that we discussed today. Even if you want to be bold and actually go international, not just stick to the home market. How do you kind of look at the growth? Where should you go? How do you think about where you want to grow? Getting experiences from companies like Duunitori is here a good example. How do you perhaps make the time a bit faster and make the costs a bit lower? But perhaps we will invite somebody from Duunitori to share their experiences in that group. If interested, go to the Boardman Grow website. You'll find the sign-up link there, and Taina will share that in the follow-up email after this session as well. We have a fair amount of sign-ups, so both groups will happen, but there is still room in both groups for 1 or 2 people. And with that, we move to the roundtable discussions, and we'll end the streaming part of the session. We won't have remote roundtables this time, so big thank you for everybody who's been online. And I hope to see you in the next event as well.